Hi, good evening. Here we are back again working on Butch. This time I'm actually inking the subject. I brought in a series of pens. This is basically what I use my rapidograph for. One's a Stettler and one's a Conor. I really don't have a big preference. I have to say one thing, the Conor tends to leak very rarely, but it tends to leak. The Stettler never leaks. So I tend to have more of those. I also bought an extra one in case something happens, God forbid. So have those all set just in case. Now, I'm also working on an angle. That is because ink tends to need suction to work. If I had this flat's one thing, but you don't really see too much of my work, I'd rather work on an angle. The other thing I'm going to do is, on occasion, I'm actually going to flip this on its side, especially when we're working on this type of subject. It's closer to me and I can do better. So here we go. I'm doing each strand, again, I'm doing each follicle in a double line. I want to get the entire face and hair done in the first segment. I also want to show you a little bit about, we're going to do a little bit of line work. It's not always going to be just hair. I'm going to flip this around on occasion. I'm going to lean it on my easel. That way you can see a little bit of the action that goes on. There is an arc of light in his forehead, and I have to be careful to maintain that arc. Every now and then I'll flip this to show you what I'm talking about. The photograph, you could actually tell the light goes in a little arc pattern, and we're going to do the same thing there. We're going to maintain that arc. I also do this with a set of lines. I brought a ruler in to show you that. It'll magnify what I'm talking about. Here we go. What I'm doing here is actually having these double lines work within each other. I don't like drawing simple lines like a lot of artists do, because that tends to be a mess. I'd rather do this, the double lines. It's more interesting. And I can actually put little stipple in those lines. We're also going to do a little work where his eyes are. Now, I did this initially in pencil, so I'm going over where the pencil was with ink. Normally, you'd think that this would be a problem, but it's not. Every now and then I'll flip this back so you could see where I'm going. Right now I'm concentrating on the hair. We'll do a little cross hatch eventually, and I'll show you what I'm talking about when we do that. There are times I wish I was taller, because then I could really do this in an outstretched pattern. It's going to work out good though. What I'm trying to do is really maintain each hair in its appropriate length. Some of these hairs are rather long. I want to maintain that length. go. Now, the ones that actually hit the face, I'm going to try to make this appropriately noticeable. We're also going to put a little crosshatch there too. We could put stipple here. That'd be one way to notice that too. Stipple is just a series of dots for putting it in a simple way. So stipple would be like this, just a series of little dots. You could also do it with a crosshatch. I think when you're doing a face, if you use crosshatch, it's a little dark. You're better off just using a series of dots. But also you run into the point where this looks a little problematic too. So you're better off just doing a very small amount, not too much.
You can bring your chair over if you want.
It's going to be a lot better if we just do a nominal amount, not too much. You could do a series of lines. I'll show you what I mean. If you use a ruler, like what I'm about to show, for instance, if you use a ruler, we'll do it this way. We'll flip it down like this. If I use a ruler and I make a series of straight lines, you could break that rule up. It doesn't have to be a solid rule. If you could see this, you can actually see the rules are broken. They're not solid rules. That's what I intend to do with this. And I'm really going to break this to it's almost atmospheric. You could break that into even more, just a set of broken rules, broken dots, and that's going to work out good. You could take that one step further and do a different direction. In other words, you're trying to make a different angle altogether, because if it's the same angle, it's going to be noticeable. You could do something that's almost 45%. So here we go. Broken rule again. Now this is crosshatch. I don't like doing it in a face. It tends to be rather loud. And on a face it could be congested looking and not necessarily pretty. What I'm going to do instead is use a lot more stipple. When you're doing a face, the less congestion, the better. So stipple is the answer. I might go with just one set of lines and stipple as an answer for darknesses and lights. With a face, you really don't want to run into having, you can't obviously do too much as far as shading. Unlike painting, you do all sorts of shading with painting. You can't really do that with pen and ink. So you're going to do stipple. That's your answer. And I guess the best thing is to really just do the hair first. So here we go. Let's take a look at the picture. Make sure the angle is consistent. I like the way the ink is coming out. It's really, the good thing about this brand, the Stettler, is very nice. It obeys my command. It doesn't fault me. Sometimes the Conroe does on occasion. By the way, if you're interested in getting this type of pen, I buy most of my products at Jerry's Autorama. They always have a good assortment, and never had a problem with not having it available. The people who work there are very friendly. They know exactly what I need. Never had a problem as far as that's concerned. And they actually know A lot of them actually know what this is. They do it themselves. It's convenient. You don't have to get a translator to tell you what pen and ink is. They know. They do it. A lot of the people who work there are artists. That helps. I've been doing pen and ink since, God, I think I was about 10. But I was doing squib pens at first. Wasn't doing rapidographs. I learned about rapidographs when I was in college. And even that's, when you consider it, that's even really old-fashioned. People don't like doing that, but I still like it. I think pen and ink is a really cool thing. It goes back to the dinosaurs, but I like it. It's really good when you can do a caricature like this and it comes out. Now with Butch, he's got a massive amount of hair, and you got to be careful not to overdo it. That's why I like doing double lines for hair instead of a single line, which is confusing and messy. When you do double lines, you're actually drawing the hair, the front of it and the back of it. Instead of doing just one line for each follicle, you're doing the double line. That way, if you want one hair to be darker, you put stipple in the follicle. I'm not doing that yet. I'm actually just drawing the follicles. I will probably do that on the dark side, which is the left side. What I'm doing more than anything else is following the main direction of the hair. Interesting, but it's kind of a wave pattern, and you got to follow that pattern. I'm doing a pretty good job so far. I'm going to turn upside so you can see it. Getting real good. There's a nice light pattern. We're going to try to follow that. I'm actually not going to do too much. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to take a ruler and actually put in kind of a wave of dark. And you can see the left side of the head has the shadow. When I took the photograph, I made sure one side was darker than the other. And once I use the ruler, we're actually going to draw in the shade part by using crosshatch. I want to get the face done the first episode. We could work on the body the next. You can see I'm getting a wave pattern going. The double follicle thing is really a good way of approaching this whole thing. I actually came up with that way of drawing hair. I've seen so many people draw hair with just simple line, and as good as that can be, it's a good way of drawing hair. It's difficult when you're trying to put a little bit of shading in. It's not consistent. It's so much better to use double lines. I think hair really needs to be done this way. Now notice too, when it gets to a nice light area, I'm simply going to stop doing. Right there is where I stop. I did it there also. I didn't complete that. Now let's see a nice interesting pattern. We're going to flip it this way and do a nice little horizon line. This is a .25 tip, by the way. A rapidograph comes in many sizes. The normal size that most people use is a .35. It's a nice average size, pretty good average weight to it. I'm probably insane because I use a very fine tip, but there are some people who use a .20, which is even finer. There are some souls out there who's a .18. I myself have sworn off .18 because it's just too darn thin. It drives me crazy. I think this is going to be just fine. The good thing about this, you could reduce this and it'll retain itself. You probably could reduce this size maybe 50%. It'll hold up. So if you ever wants to make business cards out of this image, it'll actually hold up pretty good. That's the reason I use this size. Any smaller, you run the risk of it disappearing. Kind of fun that I work upside down. I think most people are really stuck in that idea of just working from one fixed perspective. I'm not that way. I actually could look at something from many different perspectives. I'm not so much interested in the image as I am the total package. That's what interests me. I'll look at my subject the same way. I'll turn it upside down. I don't care about one particular angle. I'm looking at the entire package. Again, we're doing the double lines. We're breaking each hair into double follicles. I draw all my people this way. In fact, if you could look at the characters I have on the wall, these are larger images. I brought in the last couple episodes really small caricatures, which are years and years old. These are more recent. I did Bill Cosby in the far right with 2 other comics. These are comics that I find to be, on occasion, they resort to using foul language. Bill Cosby has never used foul language. And we're talking, well, I find that when you use that type of language, you get in trouble because certain audiences will object to it, and you can't always have the entire audiences comply to it. Now, we're talking Richard Pryor, who has on occasion used foul language, Eddie Murphy, who very frequently, early in his career, used foul language. I kind of had him in the toilet because they were referred to at one point as toilet comedians. So I thought it was kind of fun. I got Cosby pretty much laughing it off, and the other 2 are in the toilet. Next to him, I have R.E.M., a rock band from Athens, Georgia. I kind of thought of them as a band that always thought of their hometown, Athens, Georgia, as a mecca. And in that, I kind of thought the Wizard of Oz was interesting because they also, everything harkened back to the town they came from. Wizard of Oz was kind of a nice little symbol to use. I have Stipe as a scarecrow. He's kind of a languid little shape to him. Mill, the actual, to me, he was a very languid type of musician. I made him into the Cowardly Lion, long hair, just suitable. Peter Buck was a guitarist, kind of a steely type of person, played a lot of hard music, and I kind of thought he'd be perfect Tin Man. Bill Berry was the one member, he was a drummer and he left the band, so I have him as a, I have him as the monkey that flies away. I guess I'll be in trouble for that, but he did leave. And instead of having a Judy Garland, Patti Smith was at one point connected to Stipe as a love interest, so I kind of had Patti Smith in there. Next to that, I did a great drawing of somebody we all know. He's a writer of a lot of mysteries and a lot of murder stuff. I thought it'd be kind of fun to have him in there. I got all his characters next. He did some incredible characters. I had him next to his typewriter. They're all looking at and seeing in anticipation to see what's coming out of his typewriter. I thought that was kind of fun. So, Stephen King's always been one of my favorite writers, and I thought it was kind of neat to actually have him working on a typewriter and all his characters sitting there in anticipation reading what comes out of the typewriter. I thought that was kind of neat. So if you recognize half those characters, I'm really proud of you. Because I'd rather not spend all the time identifying. It's more fun to actually look at them and see if you do know them. It's kind of fun. One thing to tell you, a lot of these characters I have there are not necessarily strictly out of his books. Sometimes they're out of his movies. So I mix up the genres. They could be actually the way they were portrayed in the movie or the way they were portrayed if you read the books. So it's kind of fun. Okay, anyway, if you saw the earlier episodes, you saw some of the stuff I had done years ago. As I'm progressing, they're larger and larger and larger and a little bit more detailed. I think caricatures can do that, and I kind of like making them larger. I have more fun that way. And it's where I'm progressing. It's where definitely I'm going to get going. I kind of like working in size. It's fun. Back to Butch. Again, I got him upside down. But I'm working on the hair. And as far as I'm concerned, we're getting really good with this too. The pen dried. We get to one pen that's working. Notice what I'm doing. I'm actually forcing the ink to the tip. And that's why rapidographs are... If you remember the basic fountain pen in its heyday, you had the same problem. If you didn't adjust the tip, if you didn't play around with it, the tip would get dry. So what I do is always work with 2 or 3, especially since I'm on camera right now and I'm stuck. I don't have the, I really can't allow this to just not work. I have to have 2 or 3 ready. Here we go. We're going to do some larger lines. And remember what I said about having a little angle of light, that this area on the top of his head is where the light goes in, and this is the area that's darker. I'm going to actually show that to you with a ruler. I'm going to draw in a little bit more. I'm also spending a lot of time making sure these lines are solid and identifiable. But I still do what I said. I'm still using a double follicle. I'm very consistent about that. We're going to have some go behind. If you look at what I'm doing, some actually go behind the other ones. Later on, I'll use a crosshatch, and we can actually spend time infiltrating each one. I'm going to have them come together eventually. The light is in the top. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this and actually break them into stipple. So it's not just a set of lines. You could take these lines and stipple them. That's the way to show people that these are breaking. The information is not always consistently black and white. You can have them break. Let's keep it going. Again, if anybody's interested in learning the technique, I do teach a class at the Farmington River School of Art on Sundays. Anybody who's thinking they could pick this up, it'd be kind of fun. If there's somebody out there who has a special person they want to immortalize, this is a great way to do it. Makes for a great gift. If you're interested in learning how to do it, this would be a great present. Anybody could learn. I've taught so many different people. I want to get this entire head done. That'd be really cool. And looking like we're doing okay. The interesting thing too is there's some amount of hair is coming from the top and it's noticeable. So the trick for me is to actually show the fact that there's hair merging from the top and hair dissolving all the way through. I have a similar problem as Butch does. I have a large amount of hair on my head, and hey, thank God, don't have to invest in any hair pieces. But it's working out good. Makes for an interesting drawing. I always say when you're doing a character, always find something that really works, something that you could sink your teeth into. Whether it's an interesting facial thing or interesting, but this is going to be great. His hair is definitely a big piece of his identifiability. And we're connecting top and bottom now. The trick is this. Some of the hairs actually move in this direction now. The angles change dramatically too. So we're going to play around with the angles. I'm going to break the actual lines. We're going to flip it upside to this side now. Yeah, it's coming out pretty good. We're going to change the angles a little bit. It'll actually be more interesting for my hand. We're actually also going to put the eye in. There's something we should do before the individual segment ends. That way you can see exactly where we're at. I'll flip it up and you can see where we're at. Okay, I want to thank you all for watching tonight. We're going to put the left eye in, and that way Butch has a half face anyway. I think we're doing pretty good. If you look at this, you actually see a lot of them. I think the next segment, I'm going to show you a little bit about crosshatch. We'll have the head done, the hair done at least. We'll work on the bonsai. I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you have learned a little bit about crosshatch and how to do caricature. It's fun. The thing I like about double lines is if you're doing it right, you can interweave each one and they mesh nicely instead of a whole mess of lines, which don't necessarily work.